His first name is Randall, Rand for short. He's a physician. He's also the son of the anti-war Texas Congressman Ron Paul. Rand Paul's candidacy is the only time Kentucky has ever had a chance to vote for radical change. Rand Paul has been called Ron Paul's mini-me since he, too, is also fearful of one world government. He wants to abolish the Federal Reserve, and he's against the Patriot Act. And so the revolution continues. Rand Paul's campaign manager is blogger David Adams. Rand Paul doesn't believe the Constitution has been followed in America since 1937. According to Rand Paul, Thomas Jefferson hated democracy. And he says that Thomas Jefferson hated democracy so much that when Woodrow Wilson declared war in World War I, that for democracy, because he was going to fight for democracy abroad, that Thomas Jefferson would have came up and punched him right in the face. Rand Paul says that America isn't a democracy, it's a constitutional republic. Rand Paul points out that because of the McCain-Feingold bill, it's illegal to publicly criticize your congressman in the last 60 days before the election. I'm going to criticize my congressman right up to the day before the election. Rand fears a united North American government, including Mexico and Canada, that would replace American currency. An idea, he says, is actively promoted by David Rockefeller. In his words, he goes, when you hear about the Amero, a new North American money, he says you might say that those people are just conspiracy theorists. But if you said the same thing about the euro 30 years ago, they would have said, oh, you're crazy. We'll never get rid of the pound and those currencies. And lo and behold, they've got a euro currency. So some of the fears of world government are legitimate. He also spoke out against the NAFTA superhighway. Rand Paul's most cherished issue, the one that motivated for him to jump into the Senate race, is the America's $12 trillion debt. In his words, the one thing he's been saying in speeches is that the end of Ben Bernanke's term is coming up, the chairman of the Federal Reserve. And people are wondering if he'll be reappointed. And Rand says, let's just not replace him at all. Let's end the Fed. Do we really want a Federal Reserve that manipulates interest rates on a day-to-day basis? He says no. I don't think there's anybody being denied health care in this country, he said. We have 100% access, since those without insurance still can come into the emergency room. It's not ideal, but it's still access. Rand Paul is for term limits. He's not a career politician. More than 95% of incumbent politicians win re-election to the U.S. Congress. Incumbents win re-election at a higher rate than they did in the Soviet Politburo. Congressmen make over $170,000 per year, have health care benefits worth another $15,000, and become fully vested in the lucrative pension plan within a few years. And just like Rand is using the internet to get lots of small contributions, and he's going to turn them around in a big way. Social media is going to be a huge component of this Senate race because every one of the major candidates has a Twitter page, has a YouTube page, and a Facebook page. Rand Paul's money bomb brought in $186,000 in one day, with the average contribution being $65. These are small donors. These are regular folks like you and I. And it can be used for anybody. Anybody can do that. According to Rand Paul's website, as of today, November 2nd, Rand has raised $1.3 million, which makes him the top fundraiser in this Senate race. He thinks the biggest, what helps him the most is that he's not a career politician. Here is Rand Paul speaking at EKU.
When our country started, Thomas Jefferson was one of our great founding fathers. He wrote that in the questions of power, then no longer let it be said, or no longer let it be heard, of confidence in man, but bind him from his mischief by the chains of the Constitution. The Constitution was originally intended to bind government. They were very worried about big government. They were worried about the English government and how big things had become. Now, we were lucky in this country. We had a revolution, and we were able to have a civilization arise out of that. The French weren't so lucky. They had a revolution, and out of their revolution came the guillotine chaos, dictatorship, Napoleon, but out of ours we were able to achieve a stable country. You go along to World War I and you think, no way in America would you ever be put in jail for objecting. There was a minister in Vermont who spoke out against World War I. He was a pacifist and he felt the Christian doctrine did not embrace war. He was given a 15-year sentence in jail. People say, no way, not in America. 15 years in prison. There was a perennial socialist candidate, Eugene Debs, who ran 15 times for president. He spoke out against World War I and he was put in jail for 10 years. But he was popular enough that he ran for president from jail in 1920 and got over 1 million votes. We passed the Patriot Act, a warrant. If you're accused of something, even something awful, if you're accused of murder, a judge has to sign a warrant. There has to be probable cause before they come into your house. They can subpoena your reading records at the library here in the college without a warrant, and if the librarian complains and says you shouldn't be doing that to individuals, she or he can be put in jail for 5 years for mentioning this secret warrant. Government is out of control. You can tax people to pay for debt, or you can borrow. We've already borrowed a huge amount from foreigners. We owe the Chinese $800 billion, the Japanese $700 billion, the Saudis $100 billion, the Taiwanese $100 billion. We used to export things in this country, but you know what our #1 export is now? The debt. We sell our debt to foreign countries. But they're becoming wary of buying our debt now too. How long will it go on that they will buy our debt? But if you can't tax people enough, if you run out of borrowing capacity, the third way you pay for debt is simply by printing money. The Federal Reserve, it's called monetization of the debt. The Federal Reserve buys treasury bonds or buys foreign bonds, or actually in the last year what they've been buying is bad home loans and used car loans. So it used to be that your dollar was backed by the full faith and credit of the United States. At one time it was gold. You could turn your dollar in for gold. For the last 30 years or so it's been mostly treasury bills that back the dollar, but now it's backed by used car loans, bad foreign debt, and bad home debt, as well as treasury bonds. If you read your history, in 1923 in Germany, the Weimar Republic, they destroyed their currency. They were a civilized nation, but they destroyed their currency. You'll see in your books pictures of money in wheelbarrows where they were going to the grocery store to buy a loaf of bread with a wheelbarrow full of money. The money became so worthless that by noon workers demanded to be paid, because by 5 o'clock in the evening the money was worth even less. So they demanded to be paid twice a day. There's a period of time through September through November of 1923 where you can see the money losing its value. It was 1 million marks for bread, then it was 10 million, then it was 100 million, then it was 1 billion, then it was 100 billion, and then the currency became worthless. When you print too much money, it loses its value. That's the way we're going to pay for our debt. You will pay for it through higher inflation and higher prices.